Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It's been a minute since Marvel's released its own television show, nearly 10 months in fact. But I think it's fair to say that this isn't some cast-off series. Agatha House of Harkness was greenlit back in 2021. NFT, Dogecoin, and Among Us, if you need a refresher. Just as trends changed, so did the title. For marketing purposes primarily, Agatha House of Harkness became Agatha Coven of Chaos, Agatha Darkhold Diaries, Agatha Scratching Nichols, Agatha the Last Witchbender, and Agatha the Lying Witch with Great Wardrobe. Only most of those are for real. But jumping into the Kathryn Hahn-led WandaVision spinoff, Agatha All Along, what did you know going in? And is any super mutant hero villain safe from having their powers zapped away from them?
Well, it seems like it always happens at some point, usually in the sequels. Like Wonder Woman 2, 1984, she loses her powers. Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi versions, loses his powers.
And if you look at the comics, it's like Superman and Thor, the big dogs. Like, it's no one's immune from it. It's almost like its own power set. It's like, I can't have my power stripped away. But then, you know, in that ultimate, like, last version of it, they're going to take that guy's power.
But with Agatha All Along, I wasn't really sure what we were going to be getting because I knew it was going to be campy. There was no way it wasn't going to be, especially with how...
It's been called, and I'm only saying this because it's been in like all the headlines. I think April Ludgate, or as we know her, Aubrey Plaza, she came out saying that it was going to end with the biggest like gay explosion. Yeah, it will be a gay explosion by the end of it. And so they're calling it the most LGBTQ friendly show. And also, every single one of the main lead women were like preaching the fact that this was going to be the gayest series out there. And if you look at the Reddit fandom, it seems like the LGBTQ plus community is embracing the fact. Now, I think everybody should be able to go watch this thing. It's not like it's targeting one specific audience.
I like Kathryn Hahn. I remember I said that she was the best thing about Tiny Beautiful Things, that other show that came out.
She knows how to helm a show, yes.
Yeah, and also I thought that Agatha in WandaVision was a fine villain. I thought that she was intimidating enough. I thought that she got the job done there. So I was wondering what type of show we were going to be getting, but I came in a little bit skeptical because really recent TV shows from the MCU, such as Secret Invasion, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, Echo, all of those have been letdowns.
Very mid.
Yes, and so like we are far from the days of WandaVision, January 2021, where people were like kind of excited because we were wondering if we were going to get as good a shows as like Netflix, because at that time that's when Disney had kind of canceled all the Netflix series.
Well, fortunately, you have the same show creator, showrunner, and Jock Schaefer, right? She created WandaVision, and though that had a finale that people are very controversial with, a polarized opinion on, mostly that came to play because they had to do reshoots at the end of it and stuff.
Right.
And so like going into this, I think she had more of an idea set of where she wanted to take the series. So that's a good thing. In preparation of Agatha All Along, I've been watching a lot of the Dick Van Dyke Show reruns. I only ever watched the first episode of WandaVision, by the way. No. Yeah, I just assumed it stayed a classic black and white sitcom form throughout. Right? No, in preparation of Agatha All Along, I've been watching a lot of Parks and Rec because both of them, Kathryn Hahn was in it, and so was Aubrey Plaza. Tiny Beautiful Things you already mentioned. The Shrink Next Door, Kathryn Hahn was also in. But really, it's the last couple of years. If you go to 2015, she was more of a B-list actress. And now she's just like almost hitting A tier, right?
Yeah, I would say she's in A tier at this point.
And it's funny because her co-stars in this have been in a lot of like cartoons of it. Sasheer Zamata, we talked about because she was the devil cat in Exploding Kittens. Ali Ahn, she was in Little Demon. Patti LuPone, who's known from Broadway, like 50 years of Broadway, but Central Park, F is for Family, Vampira, BoJack, Steven Universe. You got a lot of... I guess talent that's not just television at live action. You know, it's spread out through theater and movies and everything. So that's all pros going into this. But as far as what we know about Agatha, if you played Town of Salem, or if you've read The Crucible, you would know that she's from the Salem witch trials. You see sort of the backflash of the Massachusetts thing go down in the close to the finale of WandaVision.
And that's why the Salem 7 are the people that are coming after her.
The Harpies, as she says, or like her ex-colleagues. Her mom was part of that group, I think, originally. So Agatha's put on trial, not by paranoid humans, but her peers, Coven of Witches. She's been looking into the dark magic. She shouldn't be doing that. She's bad. She's a bad lady. And so they try to burn her at the stake, and she ends up absorbing all their power.
We should also talk about what happened with WandaVision a little bit in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. You had Doctor Strange facing WandaVision. That should have been an amazing...
Facing Wanda Maximoff. Her name is not WandaVision.
Wait, that should have been an amazing movie, and I thought that the movie was terrible. They retconned all of the character development that she went through in WandaVision. They completely changed that. That was all out the window. She has to end up sacrificing herself. It was just a big mess.
Well, speaking of retconning, so remember Quicksilver in like back in the Sony days was like... he was whose son? Magneto's son, right? Making Wanda also Magneto's son. They completely changed that, and they made it so that Quicksilver and Wanda Maximoff are actually not mutants. Like so many of the other heroes,
even though
she was, they were experimented on, like we've seen in the Marvel MCU, and they changed it so that they got their powers strictly from those experiments. So I guess if they were to take a blood test and see if they have essential like powers within them, that it would come back clear, like they wouldn't be considered mutants. I found that interesting, but I don't know if we're actually going to see Wanda in this series. And I know a lot of people have asked that question.
I mean, I wouldn't think so because it's not her show, but
it's possible.
After seeing these first 2 episodes, I must say, I think we're dealing with one of the worst shows of the year. I don't understand how Kevin Feige can come out in February 2023 and say, we're doing fewer shows. Deadpool and Wolverine can poke a lot of fun at kind of how bad the MCU has currently been. And I think that both fans were happy with both of those things. Yet somehow then come out with this. One of just like, even though it's a Marvel series, feels like it's incredibly low budget. Most of it is just interior shots.
They actually made a point of not doing a lot of CGI. They wanted to make that more Sam Raimi-ish almost.
Yeah, and I'm in support of that whenever you're talking about the sets, but at least in the first 2 episodes, it seems like we've gotten just really, really low budget. There's not a lot of actors in this thing, and even Agatha, I think they've changed her character in such a way where it's like, I don't care about her that much.
She's nicer. She's nicer.
Well, and Kathryn Hahn, I mean, her acting's fine in it, but she's just not Agatha. Like, I never really got the sense that she was Agatha because when you start off with the series, she doesn't even remember who she is.
Well, okay. So I have a lot to say about that. I do want to say first, though, that this is the second MCU TV show to be a spinoff. And the earlier one, do you remember which one you said? Echo, to Hawkeye.
Right.
Yeah, that one did not, in the end, please like what you thought it could be. The potential did not meet itself, right? So here you're saying it got off on the wrong foot. It's a 9-episode run. Kathryn Hahn's reprising her role as Agatha Harkness. And one of the things that it took me until the end of the 2nd episode to realize is that when they say 3 years in the show, this is taking place after the Wanda days.
Yeah.
When I was originally watching it, I thought that she was caught up, like this was a prequel where she was stuck in the Wanda world. And there were things that made sense about that theory. And then there were things that didn't make sense. For instance, when I saw that most of the neighbors were aware of who Wanda was, I was a little confused.
Yeah.
I was like, well, so they've been in on this the whole time. But I did remember in the Wanda series, WandaVision, that by the end, most of the surrounding neighborhood was sort of aware that they weren't who they were supposed to be. Right. So I thought maybe that excused that. I also liked how when they speak of her, they kind of talk about her like she's Voldemort.
Hushed a little bit.
She's like, we don't say her name out loud, you know? It reminds me of the aftermath of the blip when people still like kind of mention it as this event, but like they don't want to get in on it. And then no one moved out of the community is what led me to believe that this was the prequel, because who would stay there? After everything that's gone down, who would want to live in that place? I would be out of there in a jiffy. I would have been moving across the country or to a different country at that point.
I mean, all that stuff I feel like it is within the suspension of disbelief.
Okay, well, how about this? Herb is still, or John Collins is his real name, in the show, is still near his bushes. The neighbor just doesn't leave his bushes, and he's not being controlled by Wanda. He just
I
is
didn't-
there.
I didn't even get that they were the same person.
What, you don't remember him?
No.
He was my favorite character from this as well, because he's like that neighbor who's just always trimming his hedges. But he's actually just doing that on his day-to-day thing because Wanda's no longer there. It also makes so little sense to me why there are when I thought Wanda was in control of everything, I was like, okay, the reason why all the witches are struggling and selling leggings and makeup
Right.
and like just not able to make anything for themselves is because they're being controlled a little bit by Wanda's sphere.
Right.
But that's not what's happening.
It seems like they're still just kind of acting the same way.
No, it's not that they Wanda's done.
No,
the
I
only
understand.
person that she still controls was Agnes, because Agnes was kind of her punishment for trying to destroy
Right, she's
her.
put under a spell.
Yes,
Yeah.
so she was the only one being manipulated. All those other witches are actually selling leggings and makeup and struggling to get
And
by, and it doesn't make
jewelers.
sense.
Yeah,
They
no,
have
I know.
magic. Like, why is there an eviction notice? You have magic. You can conjure money.
Can they?
I would assume so. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would be that difficult. It's a piece of paper, right?
What else are they conjuring?
In the show, we see them prophesize the future and stuff. And
Sure,
I'm not
yeah.
saying that they don't have their hindrances. Like the one is constantly being taken over by the possessed, I would say, by the devil or something. But then the parts that didn't make sense, the parts that lead me to understand why it is a future thing, they did leave Westview within the first episode.
Yeah, right.
It does seem a little outrageous that all the witches are within the scope of driving distance,
Mhm.
and that she was able to gather them all in one day.
Even though they all had a problem with her at some point.
Right. Not even specifically like they hadn't even met her. They just know of her, and so they didn't want to work with her.
Right.
And then why did it take the Coven 3 years to find her? If there's all these witches about, why would the rumors not have spread? Hey, there's Agatha is still stuck in this house. You know, that would have
Yeah.
word of what that would have been leaked down the line. Let's talk about this first episode. Tell me what it's about. Give me the whole rundown.
Yeah, so Agatha All Along begins with Agatha still under Wanda's spell investigating a murder tied to the Darkhold. And the Darkhold was a book that we saw in Doctor Strange 2.
Right. What does the Darkhold do?
It gives basically, well, it gave WandaVision a ton of power. WandaVision, yeah, a ton of power. And so she ends up becoming evil because of it.
But what does it actually do? Remember, why was she seeking it? She was seeking
it to try and get her family back.
Right, because it grants you a wish.
Right.
What does teen want to do in this show? The kid. He wants to go on a path. What does that path lead to?
Power.
It grants you a wish, right?
Yeah.
What did the Infinity Stone Gauntlet do?
It granted you
it grants you a wish. What in God of Thunder did Christian Bale's character want to reach eternity to do?
Grant a wish.
Grant a wish. This seems to be the thing that Marvel does, where it tries to set up a scenario where everything can be undone or redone. Reality can be changed. All the universes can be controlled by these wish-giving units of energy that are just out there for the taking. It feels like Thanos chose the path of most resistance.
Well, that's, yeah.
He could have just gone down the witch's path.
Because when you talk about, he could have. When you talk about Endgame,
that would be a funny.
Endgame was such like a monumental stepping stone, but it seemed like the Infinity Stones were like the thing to have. I mean, they spent 3 phases talking about how important it was, and here we have like the Darkhold, and as you're stating, all these other examples.
Right.
And
the Darkhold was in every single universe. So it's not like it was distinct to one of them. Yeah, I've got my issues with that type of Marvel story, but I did like how the show started because it was Mare of Easttown.
Right.
And having seen Mare of Easttown and even reviewed it with you, one of the things I remember is in the second episode of that show, Evan Peters shows up.
Yeah, right. And that was around the same time.
Maybe showing up here.
Well,
and I think that it even beat, I read this in a comment, so I'm not 100% sure, but that Mare of Easttown beat out WandaVision in some category in the Emmys. So it is really funny that they start off the show and they make you think maybe they're going to take up where WandaVision left off and keep us in reality genre bending shows. And so the first 20 minutes, you had me. I was
I wanted to go back to the intro because the intro isn't just like the Danish series. Also, all the characters are the characters' names. It's not Kathryn Hahn. It's Agatha.
Yes.
You know, it's Mrs. Hart. It's not. It's they pull a Deadpool is what
Absolutely.
they do.
Yes. Yeah, no, they're poking fun at the reality that's set in front of them. It only gets too much to me when she's in the interrogation scene and things start to go awry, and that's when she's being broken out of character. I get that.
You and I differ on this because I thought that, like you, for the first 5 minutes or so, I was like, okay, it's funny how we're kind of in a different TV series, but I had the same feeling that I did, and these are really niche comparisons, but with something like Comrade Detective, where it was like, once you got that Channing Tatum and all these other famous people were dubbing over someone else, or the weird Lifetime Will Ferrell Kristen Wiig movie, once you got that it was just a regular Lifetime movie with those people in it, it was like, I get it, and I was already kind of checked out 10 minutes in.
You get the overall premise, but I don't know if you caught all the Easter eggs. For instance, when we find out that the victim is Wanda, right?
Yeah.
That she died because of blunt force trauma caused by things falling on her. As in, when she was in that big old Coliseum thingy and it all collapsed on top of her, like you said. And then the library, when she goes there to pick up the book, like you were talking about, right? It was all burst in flame, right?
Right.
Because there was the fire. And then the guy says, like, all the other ones were destroyed, just like when she went to the multiverse and then destroyed every single version of the copy. I like the connections that they made. I also like that the fingernail soil that was underneath that was from Eastern Europe or something.
Right.
That's where that's where that tower was or whatever. And so all of those little like tiny Easter eggs people were picking up. And I think you do need to be sort of a big fan to like get all of them.
Well, you definitely need to see WandaVision in order to understand what was happening.
Well, but again, you wouldn't have seen her death at that point, though.
And Doctor Strange, too. I'm saying
and that's an ask. To make people go watch Doctor Strange 2 is an ask.
But really, so the first 25 minutes, when you were stuck in that world, you were just completely okay with.
I was okay. I wasn't like, this is the best show in the world.
One of the problems I had was that WandaVision took its time, and I know I keep comparing it to that, but it did. It took its time with the first couple episodes, and there would be hints that were very obvious. Characters would have actions, dialogue, even events in the show where it was like, okay, something very strange is going on here, and then, yeah, sure, it would go to the next scene, and it would act like nothing had happened, but it was very clear. Here, until about 20 minutes in, we don't get any of those hints. We get the Easter eggs that you're talking about, but it's not anything that, like, we couldn't put together ourselves.
Yes, there's the Easter eggs for Marvel, but then you also have to take into account the Easter eggs for Mare of Easttown, which you haven't seen.
I haven't
seen. And in the first episode, it's the end of the episode where the teen is found dead. But obviously, they're parodying all the detective series that we've done. And that's part of the thing that I'm going in here too. I'm finally liking the fact that we see a detective series, which is just going after them because they're so annoying after a while, following the same format. And so I was good with it until the interrogation scene. Then it turned into Murderville. She went over ham with the acting. Right. Some people liked it. I wasn't one of those. But then she's able to break out of the characters. How did you like that, where she was like ripping off her costumes and you were seeing all the different versions of her? Because you could obviously tell what was happening.
The one that I liked seeing the most, because I thought that just looked cool, was the reappearance of the black and white one. Right. Yeah, that one I was like, okay, that's cool. I was like, yeah, that's...
And the thing about the kid breaking into her house to like try to break her free of this, we're not sure who the teen is quite yet, but that sort of happens in Mare of Easttown as well. She does run after a bunch of little like teenage perps, and she is shown like as a 40-something-year-old middle-aged woman, like kind of out of breath but still able to catch up with people. That was also teased here.
I liked Sharon Davis's cameo in the first episode, if that was it, but I didn't understand why she's actually like in the series.
That's the mom from That 70s Show?
Yeah, Deborah Jo Rupp.
Okay.
I liked her cameo in the first episode, but I thought that was going to be it, and that would have been fine.
I'll explain that. That's actually a little funny, but that goes into the second episode. So at in mid to latter end of the episode, she breaks free of this mold. She realizes that she's been stuck in this character, that she's had her powers zapped away from her because of what Wanda was angry about.
Again, this spell,
And she storms outside naked, which has become a viral meme at this point.
Really?
Agatha Harkness's ass, like just out there in the open. Kevin Feige did not want to do that scene. But then they were like, it's not exploitative. It's not sexualized. It's literally, what, is she going to grab a rope?
But it was just very strange. It was like very strange. It didn't feel like it fit. And that goes with like 95% of the humor I felt like in this series, where I wasn't finding myself laughing. I was just more seeing it as drawn out.
I understood it. She has this conversation with the neighbor,
Right.
realizes that she's just been this crazy old lady in her house for a long time. She's not a crazy cat lady, she's a crazy rabbit lady. And so she gets back in her house, finds out that she actually does have this kid kidnapped in her closet, and then she realizes that Aubrey Plaza's character, the Rio, right,
Right.
is the other witch, must also be real, and then they have their fight scene.
So what did you think of Rio? Because I know that Aubrey Plaza can play a good villain. We
Right.
saw it in Legion. But
Oh,
here
yeah.
it just
You're right.
felt like she was just even more campier than normal.
I'll tell you, the overall opinion right now is that she's amazing, and
In
that
the
this
series?
that this was a great thing. But I think I agree with you more. I think that this first fight scene was not, to me, that special. It was just kind of them going back and forth of like, "Hey, you should wait till I've fully powered to fight me," and then she was like, "Okay," and then she left.
That was it. That's how they resolved the first episode.
Right. And so you kind of have to. I think a lot of people were just in love with the fact that it is Aubrey Plaza and it's Kathryn
Maybe
Hahn.
she's better in later episodes. I assume she's coming back. She has to be.
Yeah,
But
so let's get in on that. Episode 2, we get more of an idea of what the premise of this series is going to be about. It becomes more of the Dungeons and Dragons thing where the group party is formed and they're off on their adventure.
Well, let's go to the first scene because I had a big problem with this. So the teen that's in her closet by the end of the first episode, she lets out, uncuffs or whatever, and he's apparently the reason why she was able to break out of the spell.
Don't you remember? He did break into her house, just like in her imagination he did. And he also started whispering or saying the words in the middle of the interrogation,
Yes.
which kind of brought her out. So he had a plan, and that's why she
But
broke
my
out.
big problem,
Yeah.
it's even something that Agatha even says right after he tells her that, is that he was able to break Scarlet Witch's spell. Scarlet Witch
is dead.
is a... Yes,
Yes.
but
So
still, it's very
the fact
powerful.
that spell's even active or on such a powerful witch as Agatha, if I'm arguing devil's advocate, I would say that it didn't take much or as much as it would have otherwise. Otherwise, I think there's probably tons of indicators that Scarlet Witch had set up probably to tell her if someone tried to manipulate her.
I'll agree with you. That response makes a little more sense. But Scarlet Witch isn't actually dead. Like, there's no way she's actually dead. So
In
she's
the
gonna be
first
coming
scene,
back.
they hint at that. You caught that though, right? Because she kind of winked at the camera. She's like, "Who's ever actually dead? How can we
Right.
be sure?" So absolutely, Scarlet Witch is not dead, but I think she's dead enough for now where her power is not going to be used in that format, nor would she really care if Agatha at this point broke out. The thing that might make more sense as far as these 7 witches that are after her is that maybe she was being hidden from them while Wanda was still alive.
That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
the only reason why, because earlier I was like, why haven't they found her after 3 years? Well, maybe it's only been since her death, Wanda's death, that they were able to even seek her.
Yeah, that's true. The second episode, as you were saying, is like kind of getting the gang together, but none of the characters I felt when it came to...
Well, we got to define the parameters here. The teen says, I want to find the path. Agatha says, there is no path.
Doesn't exist.
Yes. The teen says, I know it does. This is, you're just doing the thing where...
Amateurs, you're telling amateurs so that they just kind of quit early.
Which is kind of funny that Agatha, this evil witch lady, would still follow the rules and be like, oh, and not just like tell everybody about the path.
I'm not sure if it was following the rules as much as just like not wanting him to know about it.
She comes to the conclusion that there's something special about this kid. Not only has he shown the force to break her out, but when he tries to talk about himself, which there's plenty of theories circulating right now, he's unable to, right?
Yeah.
Or he doesn't even realize he's unable to. He just gets those stitches on his mouth, or she can't hear him. It's automatically tuned out.
There's some like communication
I like those
issue.
scenes. I like the way they presented them, even if the plot doesn't make much sense. Like I like the fact that in the car they showed the swelling of the music and her trying to figure out why she can't hear him.
That scene in the car, I will say, yeah, it was entertaining. I was also trying to figure out kind of what was going on. We don't get his name in the 2 episodes. It's just Teen so far.
Yeah, I'm just going to call him Teen for this thing. And so they determined that the best way to get on the road, which is what he wants to do, is that they need the full coven together, and that's where they go trying to find other witches that are around.
So they go to a psychic, a jeweler, and a security guard.
Yeah, that's the Broadway actress.
Lilia Caldrew is the psychic, and then Jennifer is played by Sasheer Zamata. She's the jeweler.
This is where I think they rushed a bit. They just put that crew together after the first lady so quickly. And then this is the part where I think that Eric Foreman's mom makes sense. So there was the extra name on the list, which she had brought everybody together in her house, and they were going to try to get through the door. But then everybody points out you are missing the black heart. Now, the black heart, she takes and says is actually Hart, the name of her neighbor, which is Eric Foreman's mom again, Kitty.
Sharon Davis.
Yes. And she pretends like that because of the word Hart in her WandaVision name is the same lady. But in reality, everybody's under the impression that it's actually supposed to be Aubrey Plaza's character.
Rio Vidal says in the first episode, I have a black heart.
Right.
I don't know how much more obvious it could have been.
So I find it hilarious, though, that because Kathryn Hahn's character does not want to include Aubrey Plaza's character, that she brings along this complete noob, this old lady who doesn't know a thing about magic. And so at first you're like, oh, is she actually a witch? No, she's just some random lady. And all the other witches are just thinking that she's got dementia or something.
I mean, kind of fish out of water. The thing is that none of the characters they introduced, even Agatha by this point of the series, even Deborah Rupp, Sharon Davis, really was anyone that I felt like following. They all seemed like they were very snarky, and by the time that they were singing their song, I was like, what are we doing right now?
What'd you think of the song, though?
I didn't like the song. The song I thought was cringy.
It was an a cappella. It was cringy song, but it was catchy, which I think is kind of like what Agatha All Along is as well. It's it's there for its audience, which I think, again, very catchy as a song.
And then you have the Salem 7 show up. I didn't even really like the way that they looked. What did you think of them when they were like kind of closing in on the...
Were they creepy? I think when they were on the street and we first see the face of one, that was creepy. I thought that when it burst through the window, well, the teen was just like kind of hanging out on a chair. That was less scary. That was more like I could laugh at that. Overall, though, like as far as villains are concerned, I liked when they went down the hole into the other world.
You see the road.
And then the door above her turns into dirt. And then around her, it looks like we're in the middle of a Doctor Who episode. Everything is like glowing blue veins and stuff like that.
How many episodes? How many episodes is it supposed to be?
9 episodes.
So we're almost a third of the way through, and we're just now starting the journey. I feel like that's very slow pacing for the series.
I'd say we're closer to a fourth of the way through. We're somewhere between a fourth.
Yeah, and in between.
Yeah. So they are on their way down this road, and Agatha's whole deal is she wants to have her power back. And all these other ladies have their own reasons of going down. But do you think it's gonna by the time they get there, I think there's gonna be another sacrifice moment. I think Agatha's gonna have that classic twist of like, oh, I've learned so much along the way. I'm way more human now than I've ever been before. She's gonna be mortified with doing it. Like it's gonna be a second decision.
She's already more human than she was before. But she spent
3 years in her own world. And so I can understand why she's a little bit off her game, maybe.
Right.
That's
I mean, the only person that's kind of down there that doesn't need to be is Sharon Davis. So she's literally just
gonna end up getting the wish. She's gonna bring back her husband. And
I did not like how they killed him off. I was sad about that.
Didn't he die in WandaVision though?
Did he? I remember he choked.
He choked.
But did he? But
and then
did
I
they
think
actually
he that was the first time we were like, this isn't Dick Van Dyke. They wouldn't actually kill the character because I remember him vertical on the ground, horizontal on the ground. Remember?
Well, it might have been canon, but I was still sad about it.
Yeah. My favorite moment is when Agatha in the second episode sits down to drive and she's in her room still, and she realizes that for 3 years she's set up this dumb little wheel.
That wheel with the dice.
It scared me at first. I thought they were going super campy where it actually was going to work like a car and that she was going to like drive out of her house in that. But I was happy when she was like, I'm insane. And the coolest thing was probably to me when the pet, the teen, he wasn't able to say the thing in the car.
Did the teens remind you of America from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness? I felt like it was almost the same character.
Like, he could have been played by anybody at this point. A lot of theories about who he could be or why he's so quiet. Yeah, so I'm not going to say anything more on that. Unexpected scene would probably be when we saw naked Agatha. Or the opening. because
The opening,
I knew it
again.
was like a Halloween themed show, and so when I saw Detective, I was like, well, this is weird.
I know it's a strange thing to give the series props for, but I did like I said, the opening, but also the ending credits where they show you all of the witches and like Lisa Simpson and like that montage. I
Yeah.
thought was also cool, but we never got even a after credit scene in either episode.
That's true. That's true. And the first episode's only like 35 minutes. The second episode's like 40. Predictions. I think there's going to be a lot of friends made along the way. I think they're going to be a fun crew, and then they're going to end up fighting the Seven and winning.
I just don't see any of them as being likable characters. I didn't like their introductory scenes, and I don't like how they're kind of part of the journey now.
Overall, do you like Kathryn Hahn though? Because I think that's where it comes down
No,
to.
I think it's changed her character too much where I just don't see her as Agatha, and I think her acting in the series is fine, but that's why I'm going to be giving the series a very low score of 3.5 out of 10.
That's completely fair. I disagree with the Kathryn Hahn part. I think that she just embodies the character at this point. So whenever she's on screen, it doesn't matter like what she says. She's kind of just got that tone and
So
atmosphere.
she did remind you of Agatha from WandaVision.
Yeah, I never saw her as not that character. The reviews have been both good and bad. AV Club, Collider, Decider, IGN, Rolling Stone, Time, Variety all really liked it. And
Okay, so I'm in the minority.
no, Hollywood Reporter was more reserved. IndieWire, USA Today, New York Times, Ebert, Telegraph, TV Guide said no thanks. New York Times was kind of interesting too, because usually they're very pro actor / actress. Like they will go after a show, but then they'll be like, we're going to do a write up on one of these things. And they did. They did it on The Teen, though. The guy from Heartstopper or whatever. And they were like, what did they say here? In Agatha All Along, Joe Locke works like a charm. So I was expecting something like that for Kathryn Hahn. But no, the person that they wrote about, or the person who wrote the review for the show said Hahn's performance is uncharacteristically flat. So you would agree with that, I guess. And it is also said a jokey, jaggedly comic fantasy quest in which a group of unfulfilled women hit the road in search of their powers. Oof. It's got a 6.7 on IMDb, which is, it's still finding its score. It might get up to a 7. 75% Rotten Tomatoes on both critic and audience. Right down the middle. 5 out of 5 on The Guardian. The Guardian loved
The Guardian gave it a 5 out of 5.
Ooh, she loved it.
I don't know how you can, but okay. What would you give this series out of 10?
I would give it somewhere between, I would probably agree with the 6.7, honestly, right now, because I don't think it's going to become one of the best series at all, but I respect why people seem to like this. If you're going in there with the right mindset of this is Kathryn Hahn just playing it up, and they have the same costume designer as the person who did Rhett and Link. Isn't that weird? And he's also done a bunch of, like, he did The League, I think, as well. But like, you hear all these kind of crazy facts and you realize that the show isn't meant to move the MCU in some crazy world. Like, it's just exists on its own.
I know, yeah.
And unlike Echo, where it felt like it was trying to, I don't know, checkmark boxes, it felt like this show just came out of a place of passion for Kathryn Hahn and also Jock Schaefer. Like, she kept on trying to pitch that character in other motifs, like in other television shows, in other movies, until Kevin Feige was like, just give her own show. so that's what ended up happening. And I think I'm okay with that. So I'll give it a passing. You don't pass it, but that makes sense both ways. Again, my comparisons would probably be Dungeons and Dragons, but also I would say Primal, that episode with the witches. You remember they had a baby?
Oh, yeah, that was like one of my favorite. I think it was episode 8.
Yeah, and so that had an ostracized witch, and I think we're going to learn, kind of like with a series of unfortunate events, that she's sort of a misunderstood villain, because in the comics, she's always just been a teacher to Wanda. So she might eventually turn into that again. Maybe she'll be part of the resurrection. But I am curious if Evan Peters is going to return. And I think that we're just going to get a lot more backstory as the episodes go on. It's not a series that I'm going to rush to complete. It'll probably be one that I'll just watch in and out for the next year until the next television series comes out. All right. Anything else?
No, that's fine.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.